The Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine in eastern America and is a hotspot for hikers and adventure seekers. The wilderness can be a place of peace, away from the hustle and bustle of city life, with regular visitors and tourists alike dazzled by the spectacular views of the Appalachian Mountains. However, like all national forests and parks around the globe, dangers are aplenty. The Appalachian Trail is known to have notoriously difficult terrain, unpredictable weather, limited water, and is the home to the mighty American black bear. Over 3 million experienced hikers, backpackers, and amateur adventurers cross the trail each year, and since 1936, approximately 20,000 people have completed the entire trail. On the 23rd of July 2018 at approximately 8 p.m, two men named Nicholas Horton and Logan Bueller were hiking in the Big Cypress National Preserve in Collier County, Florida. It had been a long day of trekking 10 miles along the trail, so the pair decided to stop for a well-earned break. They took off their packs and sat at a picnic table located approximately 100 yards from the Nobles campground, Okapi, Florida. After having a drink of water and a snack, both Horton and Bueller noticed a bright yellow two-person tent pitched nearby, a Brooks Range mountaineering foray tent, to be exact. Beside the tent, there was a pair of black Salomon hiking boots and two hiking poles, which were black and copper in colour. Thinking that someone was perhaps inside the tent resting after a tiring day of hiking, Horton and Bueller called out, expecting a response of some kind, but all they were met with was an eerie silence. As Nicholas Horton went to refill their water bottles, Logan Bueller investigated the tent. He peered through some mesh in the fabric, and he saw what he initially believed to be a man sleeping, but after a few more seconds, the harrowing realization hit him. Logan had in fact found the deceased body of a man, described as being kind of twisted. His eyes were wide open. Shocked by what he had found, Logan told Nicholas about his disturbing discovery, and the pair swiftly contacted law enforcement, who wasted no time in arriving at the scene. The deceased male showed no obvious signs of trauma, and authorities were quick to establish that John Doe's death did not appear to be suspicious, swiftly ruling out any foul play. John Doe had only been deceased for a few days prior to his discovery, therefore he was still in recognisable condition. Despite this, however, authorities found no ID or anything that could identify the male, therefore he was referred to as simply John Doe. Something which did shock authorities was that the male appeared to be extremely underweight. He was very skinny and gaunt in the face. His cause of death was determined to be starvation. John Doe appeared to have a rather rugged appearance, suggesting to authorities that the man was likely living in the park and had been there for quite some time prior to his death. John Doe was described as being Caucasian, somewhere between the ages of 35 and 50 years old. He was around 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighed a mere 83 pounds when he was found. He likely had an average weight in life. The unidentified man also had blue-grey eyes, dark brown and grey hair, and a long salt and pepper beard. A very faint, fine linear scar was also found across John Doe's abdomen, and his teeth were noted as being in excellent condition. When he died, John Doe was wearing a beige-coloured shirt, a pair of neon green and grey Russell-branded shorts, a pair of medium-sized grey performance brand underwear, and a Columbia baseball cap, which was noted as being rather dirty. The colours on the cap couldn't be determined, however, authorities believe that it may have been grey and white. Aside from the tent, John Doe possessed a yellow sleeping bag, a grey and yellow isobutene 110G fuel cartridge, and a blue-green Nalgene water bottle. There was no mobile phone recovered at the scene, however, items that were found within the confines of the tent was a total of $3,600 in cash, something which seemed odd considering the decedent starved to death. He certainly could afford to restock his food and drink supplies. He also owned a map of Florida, but did not possess any detailed maps of the Appalachian or Florida trails. This could be seen as unusual, however, John Doe, according to those who interacted with him along the trails, was an amateur at hiking. Following the discovery of John Doe's body, Collier County Sheriff's Office appealed to the public in an effort to identify the deceased. These appeals, unfortunately, didn't result in positive identification. However, it did lead to a number of hikers, around 100 of them, coming forward, all having witnessed John Doe at some point along the Appalachian and Florida trails within the previous 12 months. Some of these witnesses revealed some rather interesting information about John Doe, the most intriguing being that he was known by a number of aliases, or so-called trail names: Ben Bilemy, Mostly Harmless, and Denim. After conducting initial inquiries, authorities found that John Doe had checked into a number of hostels throughout his travels from New York to Florida under the name Ben Bilemy, and whilst hiking along the Appalachian and Florida trails, he was known by his two other aliases, Mostly Harmless and Denim. Mostly Harmless could have come from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a comedy sci-fi series by Douglas Adams which was originally produced as a radio comedy in the late 1970s, before branching out into novels, comic books, TV series, and feature films. The fifth installment of the original series novel was titled Mostly Harmless. Interestingly, John Doe expressed his love for the sci-fi genre to a number of hikers on his travels, speaking to them mostly about his love for the British sci-fi series Doctor Who. His third alias, Denim, was reportedly a nickname given to John Doe in his early days of hiking, due to the fact he wore denim jeans rather than the appropriate hiking trousers. This again showing that John Doe was not a seasoned hiker. After piecing together statements from hikers who crossed paths with John Doe, it was determined that the unknown man began hiking in New York in April of 2017, where he lodged at Bear Mountain Park for 2 weeks before starting his hike on the Appalachian Trail. John Doe allegedly told fellow hikers that he originated from Brooklyn, New York, and that he was employed in the tech industry. Whilst taking on the Appalachians, he claimed to be working on a hiker's app. A fellow hiker who encountered so-called Ben Bilemy at the Springer Mountain shelter on the Appalachian Trail told authorities that the man mentioned an ex-girlfriend, his father, and sisters, but unfortunately, John Doe never mentioned them by name. Another hiker who spoke with John Doe at the Sand Pond campground in the Pine Log State Forest in February 2018 told authorities that the man claimed to have stayed with his sister in either Sarasota or Fort Myers in Florida before beginning his hiking journey. Authorities believe that John Doe may also have ties to Louisiana, possibly in the Baton Rouge area. The last person to see John Doe alive, another hiker, saw him in March of 2018, heading south along the Florida Trail. The hiker claimed that John Doe appeared to be healthy and in good spirits. What happened to John Doe between April and July remains unknown, as there were no reported sightings of him during this time. Those who met John Doe described him as being friendly but a little reserved. During his travels, many of the hikers he crossed paths with managed to take photographs of him. Authorities hope that these photographs will help in identifying the deceased. Quite interestingly, several of these photos show John Doe wearing braces on his knees, suggesting that he may have suffered a painful, possibly chronic medical condition. It is possible, especially since there was a significant amount of money in his tent, that perhaps his knees gave way and as a result, John Doe was left unable to walk. Because he couldn't get himself up, there was no way he could leave his tent to replenish his food provisions. He may have grown weaker because of this and subsequently died as a result. Others have speculated that John Doe simply perished from the elements, whereas others question whether John Doe was suffering from a terminal illness which caused him to waste away. He reportedly told one hiker about a number of unspecified health issues and that he wanted to take on the Appalachian and Florida trails whilst he still could. Perhaps hiking these trails was part of John Doe's bucket list. If he was suffering from a terminal illness, maybe he wanted his life to end entirely on his own terms. Despite authorities believing John Doe died as a result of starvation, his true manner of death and the circumstances surrounding it is not entirely known. It was reported in 2019 that Collier County Sheriff's Office launched a podcast called Sworn Statement, which discusses the case in detail in the hope that he may be identified. Despite a thorough investigation, conducting a number of inquiries and carrying out a number of public appeals, authorities are no closer to identifying the man, simply known as Mostly Harmless. As of January 2020, John Doe remains nameless.